we do our colors, I have a little bit of a rant. If you want to fast forward, you can, but I'm going to rant about my issues with following instructions and failing in lots of ways. So if you don't want to hear that, you can skip forward, but let me rant for a second. Hello, sweet friends. It's Sarah at Crochet.With.Coffee, and thank you so much for joining me for another WIP Wednesday. And I am crazy. That's all I have to say about that is, so I messed up. I made some mistakes so far on this blanket, and that just is a reminder to make sure that you are reading your pattern, you are going along with your pattern, and not skipping over or thinking that you know what it is that you're supposed to be doing, because I messed up. Now, will it ruin the entire blanket? I don't think so. I think I'll be fine. But let me tell you where I went wrong, because there are several things. And you guys were able to help me because you were paying attention and I wasn't. So with this pattern, I know I mentioned it in one of the earlier videos. I don't remember if it was the introduction to us starting this or if it was week 1. But I remember mentioning that I was changing the yarn weight from a DK weight, because that's what the pattern calls for, which you can change that. And I have done that before and it came out fine. It just ends up being a little bit bigger. And along with that, you have to change your hook size. So the pattern calls for several hook sizes. The pattern using a DK weight asked for a 3.5 millimeter, a 4 millimeter, and a 4.5 millimeter. Now I started using a 5 millimeter with my big twist yarn, because my big twist yarn calls for a 5 millimeter, so I just decided to go along with that size. And then you're supposed to size down for certain portions of the tile. And I didn't do that, but I see the benefit of it, and let me explain what it is. And then after we get our tiles done for this episode, I'll do a comparison so you can see it side by side. Because I had someone ask, it's like the pattern asks for a DK weight and 3 different size hooks. What are you using? And I said, I'm using a worsted weight and I'm only doing the 5 millimeter. Now, will it ruin the blanket? No, I do not think it will ruin the blanket. It will just be a little bit off in some areas, but your stitch count will still be the same, and I think it evens itself out. But let me share with you what's happening. So this is the blanket, or this is the tile. You see how it's weaving a little bit? Now blocking this would definitely help, but let me explain why it's doing that. And like I said, I have made this blanket before and I've done this and the blanket turned out perfectly fine. I'll put a picture on here so you guys can see the full blanket and see that using the wrong hook for the whole thing didn't hurt it a whole lot. But will you get a better looking blanket? Absolutely, if you follow the instructions. So this one, you see these fans are supposed to be done with the smaller hook. And you can see that that would absolutely help with this curling. And you know, I really chalked it up to, it's a weird shape when you hold it up. Of course, it's going to be a little floppy. But yeah, but if I block it, it will end up being just fine. And even if I don't, it'll be fine. So I know that from experience of my other one that I made, but I just want to explain that. And then this cinnamon row right here, that's also supposed to be done with a smaller hook. So I want to give that to you. I know that we're partway through and I messed up, so I hope that if you did this, that you're reading the pattern. Unlike me, this is really just for the mystery picks, not an instructional video. So anyway, that's problem number one. Now the second problem that was brought to my attention very sweetly. I don't know how I missed this. And you know, in last week, how I was saying that each square, or each octagon tile was supposed to be paired up with the equivalent of a square. I said that. And why it didn't register to me that it was off, where I was making 12 squares and only had 9 octagons left. I don't really know why that didn't register. I think when I was thinking of it, I was like, well, I must have just miscounted. And when I counted originally, when I was planning out every week, I know for a fact I did it several times and I was pretty spot on. So I was looking at the directions, I was looking at what I had to do, and I was positive that that's what I was supposed to do, and I had the counts right. And come to find out, I was right originally. And last week we made 12 squares. I only needed 9. So Amy, thank you for pointing that out. I don't know what to do with myself. So I would have gotten everything done last week if I had paid attention and kept reading the pattern. But in my head, I knew I needed 12, but that was because I needed 12 of the half squares that went all the way around the outside. So that's my problem. And thank you guys for helping me recognize that I was on a path that was leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. So anyway, reminder, read your pattern, stay on track, check it frequently. Don't think that you know what you're talking about or what you're doing is accurate, because you never know. Twice, I messed up twice. Will I be reading the pattern and checking it more often? I hope so, but there's no promises because I'm very bad at that. So then you might be asking, I have extra squares. If I made 12 and I only needed 9, what am I doing with the extra squares? Well, I can tell you something. Before I saw that message, I got all of my ends sewn in. Proud of me, right? But if they're the wrong ones, then if they're ones that I don't need, what's the point? My initial thought was to just use the first 9 squares and to stay on track with that, but I'd like to hear your opinion, because the remaining 3 squares that I had left, or the squares 10, 11, and 12 were really, I think, some of my favorites. So I want to know what your opinion is. Should I keep everything 1 through 9 the way that we picked them, or should I do the ones that I thought that I liked more? These were the remainder ones, the extra ones, and I really liked all of these. These are like reversed colors. They're like the same colors for the most part. The outside and center are swapped. And then I have this one. I really like that one. So those are my extras. Those were 10, 11, and 12. Now, these are the real ones. And I can tell you what ones are not my favorite. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and those were my colors that I got. I would say that I am not a fan of 1 because it looks like an egg, and I am not a fan of the other one that looks like an egg, that one. So I would love to swap those out for, I think, this one and this one. So swapping those 2 with the yellow and white centers. I would like to swap those out for these two. So let me know your thoughts on that and what you think I should do with those squares. If I should use my extra ones or stick with the ones that we had for the 9. So, all right, thanks for listening to my rant. But now we have to pick our colors. And is now the best time for bath? So we need to pick our 11 colors for our tiles, and we have 3 octagon tiles that we need to do. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3, and I still need 9 tiles. And you know, Amy, when I saw your message, when you were like, if you haven't done the outside edge yet, then you might not need to. I was really hoping that I was off in the octagon count, but I wasn't. I really wanted to be off in the octagon count because this is a lot. 3 at once. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the squares. I'm going to do all centers, each row separately. So do all the centers, all the second row, all the third row. That works really well for me. So that's what we're going to do with this too. So octagon number 1, we're going to do 11 colors. So our first octagon is going to be chocolate brown, wine, mustard, toffee, cinnamon, apple green, ivory, and then this one is our fan color. So we have a rust colored fan. All right, so we're putting everything back in except for the last 2 colors and our outside colors. So our cinnamon and green apple. And now I need 3 more colors. 3 more colors. And so the second fan is going to be wine. Then we have toffee and chocolate brown. All right, here's our second fan. So all the colors are going back in now. Our second tile, did I say fan? Our second octagon. Starting with wine, ivory, green apple, cinnamon, mustard, chocolate brown, toffee. And our fan is going to be rust again. So our first fan is the same as our first fan and the other one. Now we're putting all of our colors except for the last 2 and cinnamon and green apple. Okay, so we are keeping out toffee, rust, and our outer colors. So we need 3 more. So that is going to be mustard. Oh, mustard is our second fan. So we have a mustard fan and a rust fan for this one. Wine and chocolate brown. Everything back in for our last tile. And that is going to be cinnamon, ivory, wine, green apple, toffee, mustard, rust, and our first fan is going to be chocolate brown. Have we had? I don't think we've had a chocolate brown fan yet. Okay, so our cinnamon and green apple are staying out, and our last 2 colors are rust and chocolate brown, and the rest are going back in. Let's see what our second fan is going to be. Second fan is going to be, chocolate brown and mustard. That's going to be nice. All right, ivory, and last color, toffee. Okay, let's get started on our tiles and see what colors we get. I have our finished octagons, and let's go over those individually, and then I'm going to show you comparison of what today's looks like compared to our previous weeks to show you the difference of when I use the wrong hook size and all that stuff. So this is number 1. I think out of all of them, this one is my favorite. I think the colors are dispersed nicely throughout. I think we got a good mix of everything. I love the white like in the center there. I think it looks really pretty. And then number 2 is this one. I feel like this one, I would have liked more green. Like if green were on one of the outer rows, and then like all the bright colors are right in the center there. So a lot of yellow on this one. Right, and number 3. This one also, I feel like had too much yellow, especially like right next to each other there. And it's very bland because there's a lot of yellow and a lot of white. Uniquely, this one has that. And then the brown, I feel like kind of gives it a muted look as well. It's pretty, but I think number 1 was my favorite. So now let's look at the comparison of the octagons that I did today in comparison to the ones that I have done on previous weeks that I messed up doing the wrong size hook. Let's get a good one. We're going to go with my favorite one for today, for this week. Okay, you see the fan, and then this row here, the one that the X goes over, those are the rows that you're supposed to use a smaller hook for. So for the main portion of the octagon, I am using a 5mm. In the pattern, it is a different size because the pattern says to do a DK weight yarn, and that is thinner than a worsted 4-weight yarn. So DK is like a 3, worsted is a 4. So I'm using a little thicker yarn, so I'm using a larger hook. So I went with a 5mm hook for the main portion, and then I went to a 4mm hook for the fan and that strip right there. So the pattern says to go down a full hook size, like not just at 0.5, but a full hook size down for the pattern for those portions. So that's what I did. I went from a 5 to a 4 and, just follow the example of that. So you can see with this one, it's hard to show it actually out flat here, but this is what it looks like with the proper hook. You can see that. And now the one that I used the wrong size hook for. And I believe I mentioned that I will show you guys a picture of the blanket that I have done in the past, and I used the wrong hook size for everything, and it turned out perfectly fine. There wasn't any issues with it. So it's not that big of a deal, but I wanted to show you what the difference is. So you can see it's a little bit less wavy. This one that I use the right hook size with is a little bit less wavy than the one I used the wrong hook size for. You can see the fans are a tiny bit bigger. And then on the back, this row here, so the wrong size and then the right size, you can see that I feel like this back is a little bit more tidy than this back. You can see a little bump there. Not so much on this one. So those are the differences that I saw. Thankfully, it did not mess up anything too severely. So I won't have any problems when I'm putting it together and laying it out and everything. It's just not exactly what it's supposed to be. So it's fine. I'm going to move forward with it. I am not disappointed now that I can see the two next to each other. I think that my mistake ended up being okay. So not too disappointed with that. Thank you so much for watching. If you had fun with me today, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed already, you can hit that subscribe button. That just allows you to see more of my videos. It's not paid or anything, it's just free. And it just pops up my videos more frequently for you to see them. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you find joy in the little things.